It is an issue plaguing the streets of cities all around the nation, and it's also right here in our own backyard, gang activity and gang-related violence. But here in the capital region, it's really two cities who are at odds. As Lynne Falsetti reports, it's a battle that is taking young lives.
You drive through the neighborhood sometimes on a warm night and you can just sense the tension in the air.
Over the past few years, John Cooney has seen gang tension brewing between two cities in the capital region. And it's being fueled by violence and now social media.
In the last decade or so, the whole face of the gang presence have changed. What we now have is younger groups, children really, getting together and just taking out all the personal beefs that used to be settled in the schoolyard to a whole new level.
Captain John Cooney, former spokesperson for the Troy Police Department, says it's less organized crime like the Bloods and the Latin King gangs, meaning no rules. These groups call themselves the Goon Squad and the Young Guns, and they are fighting back and forth between Albany and Troy. And since Cooney has retired from the force, he's able to speak freely about the battle.
We've seen individuals. We have a guy from Troy who's got a beef with somebody from Albany. He goes over to Albany to take care of it. We've seen that act out, but what we see more and more now is if there is that beef, it's not just individual versus individual. It's I'll get my crew and we're going to find his crew. And next thing you know, we've got multiple suspects involved.
The feud between the two cities was fueled several years ago when Shaquem Miller was gunned down in South Troy. He was a well-known DJ and had a big following in the Collar City.
That took to a fight. That took to retribution back in Albany, and then Albany came back to Troy with a gun, and Shaquem was, in fact, executed, so to speak, on a city street. And that's when we really saw the flavor of this Albany versus Troy issue begin.
And the violence has since spread to innocent bystanders. Just last year, 5 people were shot outside Gino's Pizza in Troy. Police say only some of those shot were targeted. Others simply caught in the crossfire. Despite this, Troy police say the gang problem is fixed and haven't seen it flare up in months. We reached out to the Albany Police Department about the war between Albany and Troy gangs, but they refused our request, saying the city of Albany doesn't even have a problem with gangs. But what we're hearing on the streets is telling a different story.
I've spoken with Albany police, I've spoken with Troy police, and both of them have said that neither city has a gang problem. Do you think there's any truth to that, or do you think that they're not telling the whole story?
They don't want you to know. It's a gang problem everywhere. It's not just Albany and Troy.
Zaquan Irby knows all too well the violence is real. His cousin Darze Reed, a Troy rapper, was killed while performing a show in Albany in 2013. He says the whole street culture needs to change.
We need these kids to have some kind of community center or youth development center. These kids have nothing to do. Idle hands turns into violent hands.
Irby now runs an athletic program for inner city kids, hoping to be the positive influence he says these kids so desperately need. According to former police captain John Cooney, an intimidation factor is preventing those who know when violence is going to happen from speaking out.
With multiple suspects, we've got a great higher level of intimidation on the streets towards witnesses, a great more bit of reluctance for witnesses to come forward. That's probably the biggest handicap we have in actually solving these, maybe even preventing these, because the word's usually out on the street that it's going to happen.
But to get killed, you know, yeah, I'm fearful of that because I can walk outside right now and get shot.
Lynne Falsetti, CBS 6 News.